I'm Rick Harrison from Pawn Stars. I probably have the busiest pawn shop in the United States. My shop buys 4,000 things a month. I engage maybe 5, 10, 15 negotiations a day. Read. There's a million things out there. Always be up to date.
For years, Pawn Stars made Rick Harrison look like the calm and confident face of the pawn business. Fans watched him negotiate rare treasures, crack jokes, and build a television empire. But behind the cameras, Rick faced painful losses and personal struggles that few people truly understood. From family heartbreak to devastating tragedy, his life has been far more complicated than the show ever revealed. This is the heartbreaking story of Rick Harrison, the man behind Pawn Stars, and the emotional pain that changed his life forever. Join us as we reveal the heartbreaking details. A loss no parent should ever face. In January 2024, the life of Rick Harrison changed forever after the heartbreaking loss of his son, Adam Harrison. Reports later confirmed that Adam died from an accidental overdose involving dangerous synthetic substances.
Adam Harrison died at the age of 39. Series star Rick Harrison's PR rep confirming Adam was found on Friday, the death from an overdose. A statement on behalf of the family reads, "Our family is extremely saddened by the death of Adam."
A public information officer in Clark County stated that the 39-year-old was found unresponsive after concerns grew over not hearing from him for several days. According to reports, another resident noticed Adam had not been seen since January 17th. On January 19th, his landlord discovered him unresponsive and contacted law enforcement. Soon after, the Clark County Office of the Medical Examiner officially ruled the death accidental. The news shocked fans of Pawn Stars and deeply affected everyone close to the Harrison family. Not long after the tragedy became public, Rick shared an emotional tribute on Instagram. He posted a photo of himself and Adam sitting together at a restaurant, smiling during what looked like a happier moment from the past. In the caption, Rick wrote, "You'll always be in my heart. I love you, Adam," followed by a broken heart emoji. It was a short message, but the pain behind those words was impossible to miss. Family spokesperson Laura Herlovich later released a statement asking for privacy while the family mourned. She explained that Adam reportedly died from an overdose involving dangerous synthetic substance and said the family was devastated by the sudden loss. Rick also used the moment to speak about the growing crisis involving dangerous synthetic substance in the United States. In his statement, he said the problem needed to be taken far more seriously, showing that his grief also came with frustration over a crisis affecting countless families across the country. After Rick's tribute was posted online, thousands of people shared messages of support and sympathy. Among them was Donald Trump Jr., who commented, "I'm so sorry, man." Adam's older brother, Corey Harrison, also paid tribute by posting an old childhood photo of the two together. Alongside the picture, Corey wrote, "I'll always love you, Bubba," a message that made the loss feel even more personal and heartbreaking. Although Adam Harrison was never a regular face on Pawn Stars, he was still connected to the family business. Reports say he once worked at the famous gold and silver pawn shop before later becoming a plumber. Corey had previously explained that Adam simply was not interested in being part of the television spotlight. While millions of viewers came to know the Harrison family through the show, Adam chose a quieter path away from the cameras. But even though fans rarely saw him on screen, his loss left a painful mark on the family that no amount of fame could ever erase. But this wasn't the only heartbreaking tragedy Rick Harrison faced. One tragedy after another. Long before the heartbreaking loss of his son, Rick Harrison had already gone through another painful chapter in his life. In June 2018, Rick lost his father, Richard Harrison, the beloved old man from Pawn Stars. For years, fans watched Richard on television as the sharp, funny, and brutally honest backbone of the family business. His dry humor and old-school attitude became one of the biggest reasons people loved the show. But behind the scenes, his health had been declining for quite some time. Rick announced the devastating news on Instagram to hundreds of thousands of followers, explaining that Parkinson's disease was the cause of his father's death. Soon after, a representative for the Harrison family confirmed the news and shared the same statement publicly. Not long later, the History Channel also released an emotional message honoring Richard's memory. In the statement, the network described him as a beloved member of both the Pawn Stars family and the History Channel itself. They said they would miss his wisdom and honesty and shared their condolences with the Harrison family during such a difficult time. For Rick, losing his father was more than just losing a parent. It also meant losing the man who helped build the family business from the ground up. Richard had always been a major presence inside the famous gold and silver pawn shop. Even when he slowed down with age, his personality still filled the room. After his death, Rick suddenly found himself carrying the weight of the family legacy almost entirely on his own. Then, not long after Richard's passing, another major challenge hit the world. The COVID-19 pandemic arrived in 2019 and quickly turned life upside down for businesses everywhere, including pawn shops. At first, many people assumed pawn stores would thrive during hard economic times. After all, when people need quick cash, pawn shops are usually one of the first places they turn to. For a short time at the beginning of the pandemic, business actually increased. But according to Rick, that momentum disappeared fast. In interviews, Rick explained that COVID-19 completely disrupted the pawn shop industry. Once lockdowns began and people focused only on essential activities, visiting a pawn shop was no longer a priority for many customers. Tourism also came to a halt in Las Vegas, which created another massive problem because a huge portion of the gold and silver pawn shop's business depended on tourists visiting the famous store they had seen on television. Things became even more stressful in March 2020 when Rick had to partially close the shop as COVID cases rapidly increased. The tourist side of the business shut down for 30 days, although the financial side remained open to help people who desperately needed money. According to reports, the shop's CFO explained that they continued buying assets and operating the loan business around the clock through the night window because so many people were struggling financially. Even during those difficult months, Rick tried to support the local community as much as possible. In an interview with a Las Vegas news station in April 2020, he explained that the shop lowered interest rates and gave customers extra time to reclaim their belongings. Rick said he understood what many families were going through because Las Vegas had given him so much over the years, and he wanted to give back whenever possible. At the time, he hoped the economy would recover within 6 months. Sadly, things turned out much worse than many expected. Reports later revealed that the gold and silver pawn shop suffered major financial losses during the pandemic. A business that usually earned well over $1 million annually reportedly brought in only a fraction of that amount during 2020. The pandemic had completely changed the flow of customers and tourism that helped keep the business booming for years. As if losing his father and struggling through the pandemic were not enough, Rick also faced personal problems at home. His marriage to his third wife, Deanna Burdett, eventually came to an end. According to court documents, the two had simply grown apart over time. Rick reportedly stated that their tastes, opinions, and preferences had become too different for the marriage to continue. The divorce happened quietly during a period when much of the country's attention was focused on the nationwide protests following the death of George Floyd. So many fans barely noticed the split. Despite the divorce, Rick still spoke warmly about Deanna's daughters, whom he clearly continued to see as family. In interviews, he mentioned how proud he was of them and even referred to them as his own daughters. Social media posts later showed Rick spending time with them during family outings and off-roading trips. Even after everything he had gone through, it was clear he still valued the people closest to him and tried to hold on to the family bonds that remained strong through all the loss and chaos surrounding his life. After such losses, Rick Harrison faced another painful fight waiting for him. What could it be? Keep watching to find out. A family battle behind closed doors. Even after everything he had already gone through, Rick Harrison kept trying to move forward. Through the difficult years following his father's death, the pressure of running the business, and the financial struggles caused by the pandemic, he still had support from people close to him. His son, Corey Harrison, remained by his side, along with his longtime friend, Austin Russell. Fans of Pawn Stars had watched the trio work together for years, joking with each other while handling expensive collectibles and difficult customers. On television, they looked like a tight family unit that could survive almost anything. A year later, Rick tried to begin a new chapter in his personal life when he married his fourth wife, Amanda Palmer. After years of stress and emotional setbacks, it seemed like he was finally hoping for stability and a fresh start. But unfortunately, his troubles were far from over. In February 2022, Rick suddenly found himself at the center of a painful legal battle involving someone many fans never expected: his own mother, Joanne Harrison. According to reports, Joanne filed a lawsuit against Rick over family assets and ownership connected to the famous gold and silver pawn shop. The lawsuit, filed in Nevada State Court, named Rick, the pawn shop itself, Harrison Properties, Jorick Properties, and several others as defendants. Family businesses can already be stressful under normal circumstances. When money, ownership, and inheritance become involved, even the closest relationships can fall apart. Sadly, that appeared to be exactly what was happening between Rick and his mother. The legal fight painted a picture of deep family tension behind the scenes, something fans of the show had rarely seen before. According to the complaint, Joanne accused Rick of violating an agreement and taking advantage of a vulnerable moment many years earlier. The lawsuit claimed that shortly after Joanne woke up from a coma in the early 2000s, Rick had her sign documents transferring her 51% ownership of the pawn shop to him. The complaint argued that she was not fully aware of what she was signing at the time because of her medical condition. For many fans, the accusations were shocking. Rick had built a public image as a loyal family man who deeply respected his parents and cared about preserving the business his father helped create. Because of that reputation, many people found it hard to believe the situation had reached such a serious point. But the legal battle only became more complicated as more details surfaced. When Richard Harrison passed away in 2018, Joanne reportedly inherited his 49% share of the pawn shop. However, according to the lawsuit, she believed Rick never fully shared the company's financial records with her. Joanne claimed there were questions surrounding more than $500,000 in cash and silver that she believed Richard owned before his death. She also stated that Rick had stopped sending her monthly payments connected to her late husband's share of the business. Reports claimed Rick had previously sent Joanne regular payments of around $25,000, but those payments allegedly stopped in 2020. Joanne then asked the court to restore that financial support. The situation became even more serious when she reportedly filed for a temporary restraining order against her own son. According to reports, the order aimed to stop Rick from selling family assets, moving money, hiding cash, or taking any action that could reduce her financial stake in the business. The lawsuit also reportedly demanded a complete accounting of assets and requested that Rick stop using any of his mother's property or money. For fans following the story online, it looked like the Harrison family was being torn apart by money and legal disputes behind closed doors. Rick later responded publicly to the accusations and strongly denied wrongdoing. In interviews, he said the claims against him were false and suggested that his elderly mother might have been influenced by other people around her. He said he believed others were acting for their own benefit and insisted the situation was not what it appeared to be in headlines. Meanwhile, Joanne's legal filing painted a heartbreaking picture from her side. According to reports, she claimed that while Rick continued living comfortably as a television celebrity and businessman, she worried constantly about whether she could afford her medical care and monthly expenses. At the time, Joanne was reportedly over 80 years old and dealing with serious health problems that required around-the-clock care, with costs reaching as high as $15,000 per month. Rick later said he was shocked by the lawsuit and only learned about the restraining order request after seeing news reports online. He claimed he had tried many times to contact his mother in the months before the lawsuit, but had been unable to reach her. He also pointed out that one of the companies listed in the lawsuit was actually fully owned by Joanne herself. From Rick's perspective, the entire situation seemed confusing, painful, and deeply personal. Another emotional storm added to an already difficult chapter in his life. Before experiencing different heartbreaking tragedies, who was Rick Harrison, and how did he come to be well known? Stay tuned to find out. The making of Rick Harrison. Long before Rick Harrison became one of the most recognizable faces on television, his life was already filled with struggles, risks, and unusual turns that helped shape the person fans would later see on Pawn Stars. Rick was born on March 22, 1965 in Lexington. He was the son of Richard Harrison, a U.S. Navy veteran of Irish descent, and Joanne Harrison. He grew up in a large family alongside his siblings Joseph, Chris, and his sister Sherry, who tragically died at only 6 years old. That loss deeply affected the family long before the world ever knew the Harrison name. Over the years, there were even stories inside the family claiming they were distantly related to former U.S. Presidents William Henry Harrison and Benjamin Harrison. While Rick himself admitted he never fully believed those stories, his father often spoke about the possibility that their family had some connection to the famous political bloodline. When Rick was only 2 years old, the Harrison family moved to San Diego after his father received a transfer from the Navy. At first, life there seemed fairly normal, but things changed dramatically once Rick reached childhood. Around the age of 8, he began suffering from epileptic seizures. Because of his condition, he spent long periods stuck in bed while other children played outside. But strangely enough, those difficult years ended up shaping one of the most important parts of his personality. While confined indoors, Rick developed a powerful love for books and learning. Reading became his escape from boredom and frustration. One series that especially captured his imagination was The Great Brain by John D. Fitzgerald. The books followed a clever young con artist who constantly came up with money-making schemes, and Rick later admitted those stories had a huge influence on how he viewed business and opportunity. Even as a kid, he became fascinated by the idea of spotting value where others could not. Beyond books, Rick also developed a deep interest in physics and history. His favorite historical topic was the Royal Navy during the late 1700s and early 1800s, something fans of Pawn Stars would later notice whenever military artifacts or historical weapons entered the shop. Unlike many reality TV personalities, Rick actually spent years teaching himself about history through non-stop reading. However, school itself did not hold his attention for very long. Rick attended Taft Middle School but eventually dropped out during the 10th grade. Rather than continuing his education, he focused on making money through his own business hustles. According to Rick, he was already earning thousands of dollars every week selling fake Gucci bags. Even at a young age, he showed the same street-smart mindset that later helped turn the family pawn shop into a television empire. In April 1981, the Harrison family relocated again, this time to Las Vegas after his parents' real estate business collapsed. The move turned out to be one of the most important moments in Rick's life. Las Vegas would eventually become the place where the Harrison family built both their business and their fame. Around that same time, Rick's personal life was already moving quickly. At only 17 years old, his girlfriend Kim became pregnant. Although the couple later suffered a miscarriage, they decided to stay together and get married. Soon after, their first son, Corey Harrison, was born in April 1983. Within 2 years, they welcomed their second son, Adam Harrison. But despite building a family together, Rick and Kim eventually separated shortly after Adam's birth. Not long later, Rick met a woman named Tracy during a blind double date. After only 6 months of dating, the two moved in together, and less than a year later, they married. Tracy also helped raise Corey and Adam during those years, while Rick focused heavily on work and building the family business. Meanwhile, Rick's father opened a small second-hand store in Las Vegas in 1981 called the Gold and Silver Coin Shop. The original store was tiny, only about 300 square feet, but Rick immediately began working there during the daytime while taking repossession jobs at night to earn extra money. The family slowly expanded the business over the years, moving locations multiple times as they searched for something bigger and more stable. Rick later explained that he and his father always believed turning the store into a pawn shop was the next logical step. But there was a problem. Because of an old Las Vegas law, New pawn licenses were extremely difficult to obtain. Rick became so determined to get one that he reportedly called the city statistician every single week, waiting for the population to hit the required number that would allow another license to be issued. Finally, by 1989, after years of waiting and legal struggles, the Harrison family secured their pawn license and officially opened the famous gold and silver pawn shop on Las Vegas Boulevard South.
And there was only 25,000 people living in Vegas, and wrote a city ordinance saying they'd issue one more pawn license when the city population got to 250,000. I go down to city business license, give me my license. I know I'm the first person here.
At the time, nobody could have imagined that the small family business would one day become world famous. Over the years, the pawn shop slowly built a reputation for unusual and high-value collectibles, especially rare sports memorabilia and historical artifacts. By the mid-2000s, the business was reportedly loaning out millions of dollars every year and earning huge amounts through interest and sales. The store also became known for helping desperate gamblers who needed quick cash after losing money in Las Vegas casinos. Corey once joked that some customers pawned items just to afford gas money to get back home. As the business grew, jewelry became one of the most common items brought into the store. By the time Pawn Stars exploded in popularity, thousands of items were constantly flowing through the shop every year. The once tiny family business had become one of the most famous pawn shops in the world.
Now, Rick's bar is located upstairs, and Rick actually bartends up there. So I guess it's called the Smoke Barbecue and Tavern.
In 2015, Rick expanded again by opening a restaurant and bar called Smoke BBQ and Tavern in the plaza near the pawn shop. Fans occasionally spotted him bartending there himself, showing that despite his growing fame, he still enjoyed being directly involved in the businesses he helped build from the ground up. But while success made Rick Harrison wealthy and famous, the difficult childhood, family struggles, health scares, and years of non-stop hustling that shaped his early life never truly disappeared. In many ways, those experiences became the foundation for both the success and heartbreak that would later define his life. Everything changed for Rick Harrison because of one risky television idea that became a reality. How did this happen? Keep watching to find out. How Pawn Stars changed Rick Harrison's life forever. Before Pawn Stars became one of the biggest reality shows on television, Rick Harrison spent years trying to convince networks that a pawn shop could actually make entertaining TV. At the time, most people probably thought the idea sounded strange. A show about old collectibles, random customers, and a family-run pawn business did not exactly sound like a guaranteed hit. But Rick believed there was something special about the world inside the gold and silver pawn shop. His interest in television really started growing after the pawn shop appeared in an episode of Insomniac with Dave Attell back in 2003. The appearance gave viewers a small glimpse into the strange, unpredictable world of the Las Vegas pawn business. Rick immediately saw potential. He spent the next 4 years pitching different versions of a pawn shop reality show, hoping somebody in Hollywood would finally take the idea seriously. But for a long time, nobody showed much interest. That finally changed in 2008, when producers Brent Montgomery and Colby Gaines from Left Field Pictures came up with their own idea for a reality show based inside a Las Vegas pawn shop. After hearing about the gold and silver pawn shop, they approached Rick about developing a series together. At first, the concept was pitched to HBO, but the network reportedly wanted a completely different kind of program. Instead of focusing on the family and the items coming through the store, HBO preferred something closer to a late-night confession-style series centered around the pawn shop's night window. Eventually, the format changed entirely after Nancy Dubuck from the History Channel became involved. She helped shape the show into the version audiences would later fall in love with. The new idea focused not only on the rare and unusual items brought into the shop, but also on the personalities working behind the counter. Experts would come in to examine historical artifacts, while the family dynamics between Rick, his father, Corey, and Chumley added humor and tension to every episode. The show almost had a very different name, too. Originally, it was going to be called Pawning History, but someone from Left Field Pictures reportedly suggested the title Pawn Stars instead, partly because it sounded more attention-grabbing and memorable. That decision ended up becoming one of the smartest branding choices imaginable. The series centered around Rick, his father Richard Harrison, his son Corey Harrison, and Corey's childhood friend Austin Russell. Each of them brought a completely different personality to the show. Rick played the smart negotiator and businessman. The old man delivered blunt humor and old-school wisdom. Corey often clashed with Rick while trying to prove himself capable of running the business one day. And Chumley became the lovable wild card whose mistakes and jokes constantly entertained viewers. Not every moment surrounding the show was positive, though. Before Pawn Stars exploded into mainstream success, a February 2009 YouTube video connected to the shop caused controversy online. In the clip, Corey jokingly threatened an intruder with a handgun, while another emotional moment showed a woman screaming after demanding the return of her husband's wedding ring that had been sold to the pawn shop. The video reminded people that pawn shops often dealt with emotional and unpredictable situations behind the scenes. Still, none of that slowed the momentum of the show itself. By January 2011, Pawn Stars had officially become the highest-rated program on the History Channel and one of the most successful reality shows in America, second only to Jersey Shore at the time. The success completely changed Rick Harrison's life. The once small family business in Las Vegas suddenly became world famous, attracting huge crowds of tourists every day. That same year, Rick released his autobiography, License to Pawn, where he shared stories about his life, the pawn business, and how the family built their empire from almost nothing. The book even reached the New York Times bestseller list, proving that audiences were interested in far more than just the television show itself. As Rick's popularity grew, he began appearing outside the Pawn Stars universe as well. In 2012, he appeared alongside Corey and Chumley in an episode of iCarly called I Lost My Head in Vegas. Just a few days later, he also appeared in an episode of The Middle, playing the owner of an antique shop. By 2014, Rick's fame had reached the point where companies wanted him to promote products too. He became the spokesperson for the Micro Touch One razor and appeared in television commercials advertising the men's grooming product. Around the same time, the History Channel expanded the Pawn Stars brand even further. A new series called United Stuff of America explored important historical artifacts connected to famous moments in American history. Another game show spin-off, called Pawnography, featured Rick, Corey, and Chumley competing against contestants for cash and prizes from the pawn shop inventory. Years later, the franchise continued evolving. In 2022, the show Pawn Stars Do America premiered, following Rick, Corey, and Chumley as they traveled across the United States, searching for valuable collectibles and rare historical items. Then, in 2025, Rick and Chumley launched the Pawn Stars After Dark podcast, where they began sharing behind-the-scenes stories from the pawn shop and interviewing guests connected to the show. Even after all these years, Rick continued finding new ways to expand the Pawn Stars brand. But despite the fame, the money, and the massive success, life behind the cameras was never as simple as it looked on television. While millions of fans saw Rick Harrison as a confident businessman surrounded by rare treasures and entertaining chaos, the reality was that fame also brought enormous pressure, family struggles, and personal heartbreak that viewers rarely got to see. What was fame beyond the pawn shop like for Rick Harrison? Let's find out. Fame beyond the pawn shop. As Pawn Stars continued growing in popularity, Rick Harrison and his family began receiving recognition far beyond the pawn business itself. In March 2010, Rick, his father Richard Harrison, his son Corey Harrison, and Austin Russell were awarded the key to the city of Las Vegas by Mayor Oscar Goodman. The honor showed how much the show had helped bring attention and tourism to the city. 2 years later, Rick and his father were nominated for the 2012 Time 100 list, recognizing their growing cultural influence. That same year, the Pawn Stars cast also served as Grand Marshals for the History 300 NASCAR race. In 2023, Rick received another major honor after being named a Kentucky Colonel. So, what are your thoughts about the heartbreaking tragedies Rick Harrison faced? Let us know in the comments section below. In the end, this wasn't just about fame, money, or a television show. It was about loss, family, pressure, and the painful moments Rick Harrison faced behind the cameras. From losing his father and son to battling personal and family struggles, the man viewers watched on Pawn Stars was carrying far more pain than most people ever realized. And maybe the real story of Rick Harrison isn't about the treasures inside the pawn shop, but the emotional cost of holding everything together. If you enjoyed this, like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more real stories behind the headlines.